Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky says he is willing to create a demilitarized free economic zone as part of a potential peace deal to end the war with Russia. That's if Moscow takes similar steps to withdraw its troops out of the eastern region of Donetsk. It comes as 3 people, including 2 police officers, have been killed in an explosion in Moscow. Ivor Bennett has more details.
Well, this is the second fatal bombing here in Moscow in the space of just 3 days, and it happened, as you say, in the same area, the very same area as Monday's explosion in this residential suburb around 11 miles southeast of the Kremlin. In this case, the authorities say that the 2 police officers were killed after approaching a man who was acting suspiciously in this area. An explosive device was detonated and a 3rd person was killed. Unclear who that 3rd person was, but some local media here are claiming it was the bomber, but as I say, that was unconfirmed. And this followed Monday's car bomb that killed a senior Russian general. His name was Lieutenant General Fanil Safarov, and his killing was the latest in a long line of high-profile assassinations that have occurred on Russian soil since the Kremlin's invasion of Ukraine nearly 4 years ago. Kyiv has claimed credit for some of those attacks, but no claim of responsibility for these 2 latest bombings here in Moscow. However, the authorities here believe that Ukraine may have been behind the first one at least. Either way, the fact this keeps happening will be highly embarrassing for the Kremlin because it's so far from the front line and they still haven't figured out a way of how to stop these kinds of attacks. Well, we have had an update from Ukraine, actually, on the latest peace proposals. President Zelensky has unveiled a 20-point framework, not a plan, but a framework, he says, that the Ukrainians have agreed with the Americans following several rounds of talks with them. He says it's a considerable evolution, so very different from the initial plan that was put forward by Washington, that 28-point plan, remember, that lent heavily in favour of Moscow. So what exactly have they agreed upon in these 20 points? He says with Washington they've agreed Article 5-style security guarantees for Ukraine, robust, he described them as, and for the army, the Ukrainian army to stay at its current strength of 800,000. But there's still no alignment with the White House on this thorny issue of territory, in particular control of the Donbass. Russia, remember, wants all of it, but Ukraine doesn't want to give up territory that Russia hasn't yet conquered, and the US is trying to find a compromise in between those 2 positions. We're told here in Moscow that Vladimir Putin has been briefed on these latest proposals, but the Kremlin has not given much away on that, saying only that it will now formulate its position. How do the latest bombings here in Moscow fit into all of this? Well, if it is Ukraine behind it, well, then it could be their way of trying to show the US that they can still hurt Moscow, that it's not one-way traffic, and that Russia does not hold all the cards, as Donald Trump might say, and as Vladimir Putin has been trying to make out.